Welcome back to the channel here. This is Josh Does Movies, and while we usually see me talk about some movie reviews and maybe once in a while, once a week or so, put out something about the weekend box office and where we're at, I'm starting something new here on Wednesdays, which is going to be a ranking style show. I find this is going to be easy ways for me to include some TV style stuff like today, as well as kind of make up some lists of things that have happened in the past. I'm somebody who's seen a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows in the past, and I can't really just go back and review them per se. So I kind of sat down and thought about it, and kind of just through conversations with myself and some other people, I figured out, why not start a weekly style show that over time I can put out, you know, past style reviews for TV shows and movies and different type of lists and give a little bit more about my flavor besides just what's coming out this year. And when it comes to ranking stuff, I can't think of the most obvious and better way of ranking things right now in the world than the MCU by Marvel Studios, the cinematic universe. Over the course of the next month or so, we're going to be ranking all of the movies for the MCU, but today we're going to be ranking the top six, basically the six shows of the MCU so far. Started out with WandaVision last year in January. You've had Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye, and Moon Knight just released here in the last month or so. Obviously, this list will be included on something I'll include more of when we get more shows added on there, like Miss Marvel coming up at the end of the month and next month. So this is a list that what I'll probably do is I'll probably when I do the reviews of these individual movies and shows that gets released after this, these rankings happen over the next, over the course of the next month. I'll go and pigeonhole these where I would put these individual properties on said list later on. But today, though, we're here to talk about TV shows that the MCU has released. With Disney Plus starting out, the Marvel universe has transitioned not just from the big screen movies that are around, 2 to 3 hours. They're now moving more and more towards releasing TV shows in 6 episode bunches. WandaVision was kind of a special 10 episode amount, but it was shorter episodes compared to the 6 episodes we've had with all the rest of the series. I'll go in, personally before my taking. I think that 8 to 10 is just better. You'll probably see as I go into my review. I think some of these shows suffer from what feels like rushed storylines in some ways. But in a lot of ways, most of them have been super entertaining and things I would recommend and have recommended to family members to watch on their own. By the way, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this top list here of the top MCU TV shows. So, I'll be honest, this first one is one that I really just didn't like for a few reasons, and that's going to be Hawkeye. Um, I think Jeremy Renner has always done a great job with the character of Hawkeye. I actually think Haley Steinfeld in this show was perfect casting for a Kate Bishop. I love Haley Steinfeld, both in some of her movie roles in the past, as well as some of her TV show work elsewhere with Dickinson and Arcane. But this show had some glaring issues, and a lot of it comes from the connective universe per se. One, shoehorning in Wilson Fisk. And I guess spoiler alert now. If you haven't seen any of these shows, I will be going into beginnings and ends of them. Even Moon Knight now has been out a week, so if you're checking this out, be aware spoilers are to come. Stuff like that. But with Hawkeye, you had Wilson Fisk come in as Kingpin at the very end to be this bad guy, and obviously they cast Vincent D'Onofrio, who's famous from the Daredevil Marvel show on Netflix, which is now on Disney Plus. Somewhat tied to the MCU, but somewhat separate. Maybe I'll make a list of those TV shows down the line. But he comes from that show being a very dominant, very serious, mob bossy, strengthy villain to being very comedic and cartoonish here in a not great way. Kate Bishop throughout is a very kind of arrogant slash annoying character, and that's not because Haley Steinfeld's acting bad. That's just how they wrote this character to be. And I feel like she wasn't flawed enough for the aggressive uh, push she put on throughout. The series tried to justify that she was right the whole time, when I think it would have been really good to kind of have her kind of just like with a lot of the Marvel movies or TV shows, have her be a little bit more flawed and fall back, and be a little bit more humble. She was not humble at all in the TV series, and this is what really made me a hard pill to swallow for a lot of these 6 episodes. I also think Yelena Belova had some excellent parts and great chemistry with Kate Bishop, but I think that finale with her and Hawkeye's resolution with Natasha's death just wasn't well done and earned. I think it was very short. I think it kind of undersold Yelena and her passion, and it honestly took again. It was too many cooks in the kitchen. We had the last episode reveal of Kingpin. Then we have this episode reveal of a couple episodes earlier of Yelena kind of coming in. Obviously Kate's mom being a villain kind of the whole time, and and her the her love interest being the um the cop out, the fake villain. There was just so much going on in this show that some of it does really work. I think the middle episodes tend to be the strongest, especially episodes 3 and 4. But I just did not like the way this show ended. I did not like the beginning part of the show. I think the LARPing was a kind of fun thing at the beginning, but the characters being brought back in and having a big kind of scene in the finale kind of just didn't fit for the MCU. And I think another thing is, with other movies and such, there's people in New York City that would be looking out for the massive amount of cops and crime that happens. So the fact that they put this in New York, some of the Christmas parts was very touching and stuff. It's a very Christmassy show. It's a show that I probably will revisit in time, if not this year, but in future years during Christmas. But this wasn't just my favorite MCU show as a whole. I think it has a lot of flaws with writing of the Kate Bishop, and the finale was just so thrown together last minute. They left way too many loose ends, and Kingpin coming in and playing a cartoon version of the one that we've seen on other TV shows. When they were hyping it up through the whole season as he's the big bad, I think was very unfortunate. I will say Echo to me was somebody I did enjoy seeing and kind of her death angle, and I'm interested to see what her and going forward with her own show may be. But that's kind of how I feel about Hawkeye, and it's in my number 6 position. Uh, Now, after Hawkeye, this is where I kind of had, I think 5, 4, and 3 are the ones that are all closest to me in rankings for a lot of different reasons. But number 5 for me is actually Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I was actually surprised about. I was kind of thinking back and I was like, there was a lot of the show I liked at the time. I liked the gritty and the more violent side that we saw. I came to actually enjoy, Wyatt Nash's. I think it's Wyatt Nasher. I forget what the actor's name is, but the his version of him trying to him being forced into Captain America after Sam turned it down. Bucky's journey throughout was of kind of real rectifying his past and getting ready to move on in life was also very good. I think Sam's whole arc about becoming Captain America was probably the heart of the show and was the best part about it. But things like Zemo was enjoyable, but he was kind of brought in here as a little bit of a side character. Felt very different, and from what we saw in Civil War. Probably a more comic accurate Zemo, but I think there was a little too quick for comfort between the three of them, and kind of him being so rich and almost noble in a way was, and with Sokovia being an actual baron. I think the Madripoor tie-ins had huge letdowns when it came to who is the big bad pulling the villains. I think the Hand, the terrorist group, were very I sound from what's been said is this show was supposed to have a pandemic style storyline, where the terrorists were trying to find the cure for a virus that was happening with everybody coming back from the blip, or in that type of action. But they decided to cut that out because real life COVID happened, and they felt that nobody wanted to have a virus storyline while we were all living in a virus. And I kind of understand, and I probably do agree with them on that. But the terrorist organization was not well done. The most intriguing parts of the show were all the character moments with Sam and Bucky. Again, I do like some of the imagery that comes out of the show. I like the imagery of the blood on the shield at the end of episode 4. That was one of the biggest jaw dropping, like, oh my goodness, they really did that moments that we've seen from Marvel of late. But the big reason why this is number 5 over the rest is I did not truly enjoy the finale. I thought the terrorist organization got really picked up really cleanly. I think that outside of Sam and his performance as Captain America, with his new gear, the finale was largely annoyable. We had a little bit of a redemption arc for U.S. Agent, which again I didn't really want to see him get redeemed. I would have rather just Kinsella, Julia Louis Dreyfus's character, just kind of twist him a little bit to make him feel like he's a hero, and that now he has to do we're gonna make him U.S. Agent. I don't think we needed to see him try to team up with Bucky and Sam at the end of the season. After we saw him brutally murder people in the streets publicly, just a couple episodes earlier. Again, the big reveal of the big bad coming out of Madripoor wasn't very strong or good. I think that we could have had an interesting new character brought up, but I think Sharon Carter being the bad, the big bad influence of Madripoor was just really easy and really, I think, dull out for how much the show is making it out to be. Again, that was like the obvious answer was right in front of us, and that was perfectly fine for it to be the obvious answer. But it was overly top the obvious that it was just like, eh, you know, it's one of those reveals that I think if they revealed at the very beginning of the season or in the middle of the season, it would have held more suspense for us knowing that that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier were being used by the head of the Madripoor crime, business. Instead, though, it ended up being an end credit scene, a finale type reveal that we didn't really need the mystery with that. So that's kind of the reasons why I think the Falcon and the Winter Soldier is my number 5. Like I said, I love Sam in this role. I look so forward to him as Captain America moving forward. I think him and the storyline with Isaiah was really moving and strong. And as much as some people don't like to bring up race in the world nowadays because they feel like we're race baiting, I'm not black. I can never act and say I know what it's like to be that minority feeling. But I thought they handled it in the show very, very well. And I think if some people have an issue with that, they might be just as honestly like that's I think they're part of the reason why we have to have shows say stuff like that because nobody ever blinks an eye when it's the opposite way sometimes, and it might have went a little bit over the top, but again, this is this is a issue that I still think affects a lot of people in the world today, and we hear about it from the younger generation, and sometimes still feeling kind of that systematic racism withheld in different areas. And I'm not here to say that people are openly racist. Everybody's openly racist. I don't think that's the case. But it was great to have the voice be heard by both Isaiah and Sam in the show, and I really, really look forward to seeing Sam in the future, whether it be in Falcon and the Winter Soldier season 2 or an upcoming Captain America movie. He really came into his own with the role of Captain America at the end, and I just can't wait to see what else he has to bring. Like I said, I really enjoyed Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's just lower on my list because I think the villains were extremely weak, and again the finale I think just tried doing too much or tried saving too much for it when they could have easily have sprinkled it throughout the season, and I think it would have made the show and the experience overall better. All right. Number 4 for me is the new show Moon Knight. why is this number 4 and not higher, or why is this number 4 and not lower? I'll answer this question with I did not enjoy the story of Moon Knight. I think it was scattered all over the place. I think the pacing was wrong. I think it logistically was wrong with what we saw in the show, both in the show itself and the MCU as a whole. But the reason why it managed to get above Falcon and the Winter Soldier is for one reason, and that is Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke's magnificent acting performance throughout the show, especially Oscar Isaac. Oscar Isaac playing the roles of Mark and Steven so fluidly and so well and so differently that you felt like you were watching multiple different people. With multiple personalities was so moving and so heart touching. Seeing how they went from people who distrusted each other in the beginning to being almost brotherly like near the end were truly, truly astonishing in terms of acting performance wise. I think that everything good about the show really comes down to those two elements of Oscar Isaac's. It should be award winning acting performance for a limited series at the Emmys this year. And Ethan Hawke kind of being beside him as a very making the most out of a very bland villain. But my issues with and with Moon Knight is it just the first episode was very intriguing and great. The second episode was fine. The third episode felt like it should have been included. Like the second and the third episode should have been morphed into one longer episode because it was very shallow and it had a moment that I personally had two things I didn't like. First thing I didn't like was the Chamber of the Gods, and I think for the show as the whole, how it handled the Egyptian gods and these avatars were downright awful, and it made it very laughable at points, in a not good way. Um, but episodes 4 and episodes 5, especially episode 5, I think episode 4 was again very strong, very great. Having when in the kind of the asylum per se, in episode 5, really diving into the history of Mark with Steven and what he was going through in his life all those years. Some of the most emotional, moving type episodes of a TV show I've seen. Period. Let alone with Marvel. They are so good and so strong, and they're just enough to tell people like, hey, give Moon Knight a chance. You're not gonna like. You might not like the first couple episodes, or especially episode 3. But I promise you, episodes 4 and 5 on their own will make those first few episodes feel better, but will make you feel like you should have been make you enjoy the show and make it feel like a must watch in itself. But I think the finale again is where it tries doing too much. How they handle avatars makes no sense. The fact that we have the Scarlet Scarab coming in as an avatar for the underworld god. Like it doesn't make sense because all the other avatars didn't have their own fighting gear and stuff like that. Um, you see these huge gods. I don't know if they're supposed to only be visible for Harrow and for um, Mark, but you see him talking to Layla. You see Khonshu talking to Layla. So you assume you see these big Egyptian gods fighting next to the pyramids, which would 100% like notify Doctor Strange and the sorcerers right away. That wouldn't go undone in today's day and world. That would be live streamed on Twitter like instantly, and people would know about that instantly. But it just again way too much needed to be done. And I think that's the big issue with these Marvel shows is they are limiting them to 6 episodes when they really should be 7 or 8 or 9, maybe even 10. And if you give them the proper spacing out like that, like most TV series, I think they can fix some of these issues, and that finale could have gone a whole lot smoother overall. But Moon Knight to me is just a number, number 4. Just again, Oscar Isaac, man, he's such a good actor, and him portraying Steven and Mark in this show. And I look forward to if there's any more potential, people he's going to portray with this character of Moon Knight. such great acting. And again, episode 5 was one of the best episodes of TV of the year so far. Um, which is interesting because the show itself wasn't one that I found too amazing, but it really was a standout, and it's really the reason why it was pushed up to number 4 here in my MCU TV show rankings. That makes us the top 3, and I'll be honest, this is the top 2 have a large separation from this third show. Which, believe it or not, I was surprised that it made its way higher in the ranking each as I came down listing, and this show was one where I was like, I think this is gonna be. I knew Hawkeye was my last one, but this is gonna be above Hawkeye. And then I started thinking about, I was like, no, this is better than the Falcon and Winter Soldier. And then I was like, is it better than the Moon Knight? And I was like, actually, it is. And that is What If. I think a few things. I'll have to say the animation is solid here, but it's nowhere. It has the unfortunate time placement of coming out the same year as Arcane did. So a lot of people who are looking for adult animation, which What If is a lot very adult like in some things. It's definitely geared more towards PG-13 and older audiences than it would be for a animated cartoon that most Americans are used to. But coming out in the same year as Arcane for that same audience, it just hurts this show, I think, for a lot of people because they're gonna see this show and they're gonna like, well, that was decent animation. It has really good storylines and it's built in pretty well in this what if concept. But then you're gonna, if they do see a show like Arcane, they're gonna be like, wow, that animation was off the charts. That storytelling and that style of show was equal to some of the best, adult TV shows you'll see out there, drama TV shows you'll see out there, and it kind of brings What If down a bit. But when you compare it to these Marvel shows that we have, I think it has a lot better storytelling throughout. I think the animation is pretty strong in Marvel's first kind of outing here. You have different universes at first, and I kind of wish they let you know ahead of time that these what if storylines were going to mix together as we went on in the series. Because I'll be honest, I kind of dropped this originally after the first few weeks because I was like, well, these are kind of cool side stories, like little one off episodes, and I think that's still a good concept to have. But once I figured out that, we were seeing them all entangle themselves together into actual storylines with all the, with characters coming together in a multiverse, in this style way. It really made me enjoy this a whole lot more as its own story. There's a lot of standout episodes in here. Doctor Strange as source, as the Supreme Strange was such a heartbreaking but also moving and powerful, and just shows you how the edge of positive and darkness can be easily done. Ultron coming in, I was surprised to see him have a big effect. Chadwick Boseman's voice work for his, him being picked up instead of Star-Lord. Peggy Carter was brilliant throughout, and how they handled Steve throughout the whole thing, was pretty well done. While there's some episodes that I feel are kind of weak and missing, this is one of the shows that had the longest amount of episodes, and I think it was able to succeed so much because it wasn't bogged down into an only 6 episode format, and we were able to get a decent storyline throughout. And the Watcher, as Jeffrey Wright, was perfect casting. Perfect casting, and I hope we see him not just in this TV show, but I hope we get him more when it comes to MCU movies proper and live action. But What If is one that if you dodged it because you don't like animated shows, you thought it wasn't necessary for the MCU, this is what I actually recommend. Go back and watch and give it a chance. I think there's a lot of great, powerful episodes in here. I think the animation is decently well done. It's not going to be top notch like maybe other things you've seen out there, like the Arcanes, but I think it's a well done show. It's very solid, and I was surprised how much it moved up on my list from my initial expectations. But it comes in at number 3, and that leaves 2 shows: WandaVision and Loki. These are the 2 shows that I think, for me personally, were miles ahead of the rest of the MCU shows by far. They felt like they had the best complete narratives throughout. They felt like they had really gripping storytelling throughout. And when they were the ones that left the biggest emotional impact and want from me. And it hurts me to say this because the show was so enjoyable and good. I really enjoyed it a lot. But number two is WandaVision for me. Um, this show was just showing amazing acting throughout. Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda. Um, Not just in the new Doctor Strange movie, which you can check my non-spoiler review out on the channel here, but this show was just a master class in her acting this character out and seeing, having her not just act the different eras per se, but kind of, having the nuance of showing somebody who's really struggling and is in pain in all of these episodes while hiding it and forming her own perfect life. Paul Bettany as Vision again was also extremely well done, and his second half of the season was really touching and smart. I know not everybody is a big fan of the Vision v Vision, face off at the end, but I loved that they had, him at, and yeah, he made it seem like there'd be a bigger person who he'd have to fight at the end, but he was joking and talking. He had to fight himself. But I love the idea that even though Vision is this amazingly strong being, um, it comes down to a battle of words and logic between him and White Vision. Very, very well done and very, very well said. Agatha Harkness was again somebody you kind of figured and knew that she'd having a bigger role, but I actually really loved her backstory and her connection with Wanda and kind of the how she leaves Wanda off and shows Wanda like, you really think you're the good person? You have these people brainwashed and entangled and feared. um, I think Monica Rambeau came into the show and really, well, again, a very solid side character in the show, coming as a member of Sword and her getting her powers and kind of being a foil to Wanda as I've lost someone too, so I understand how painful that could be. Was very, very well done. Um, I think this was 10 episodes, I believe. Um, or was it 8? The episode where we got to see Wanda's past with Agatha was again another show of Marvel being brilliant and really showing a power of a character drama and understanding where people come from and why they are the way they are. WandaVision has so many great things going for it. Great humor throughout. Some people might get turned off or be confused by the first few episodes because they are period piece, 60s and 70s and 50s sitcom style stuff. But I think it's a journey in artmanship that I truly enjoyed. And as the season got on, I kind of wish we would stayed in that a little bit more. But that's okay because I really do think the Monica Rambeau connection with Wanda worked very well. I think Wanda figured, dealing with her suffering and kind of coming to that conclusion with Vision, the vision she made up, of how to heal was very powerful. Um, the lines in this movie, like the show, like what is grief but love everlasting, or in that type of way. Love persevering. What is grief but love persevering? Like so many, I'm getting kind of emotional thinking about it, but there's so many good heartbeats. Why this show was number two for me is I think again it suffers from Marvel having to do a little bit too much in the finale and a really big fake out when it came to um, Ralph Boner. That brings it down a little bit for me. But the finale, I thought, kind of went a little bit out of place again. The villain of the show, I think, was very two dimensional and bland. Coming, the sword agent. At least it wasn't it wasn't a member of Hydra per se. And I guess it kind of, I wish they would have given him more reason why he should of trust that kind of thought understood why he thought so. But when they went over the top with him trying to shoot the kids, that to me was just like you just wanted to make him seem bad. When I would have rather preferred a complex villain that you kind of understood or could kind of believe in and say like, no, they have a point. Because I think Agatha, that's why she worked so well, is because she did show what reasons why Wanda was in kind of a gray area character in the show with how she was using her powers to make her own world and really at the harm of the people who lived there. And I would have loved if they were able to tie that in more with the Short villain. But again, they just wanted to make him a bland bad guy here. But yeah, WandaVision, amazing show. Excellent number 2 on this list. One of my top 10 shows of 2021 last year. Not number 1. I think it came in around number 5 or 6. But a very, very solid show. It only was held up in terms of my MCU personal ranks by Loki. I love this show. I think Sylvie was a character I was worried about. And I still think there's some issues that could or could not happen for him. But I think Loki was just phenomenal from beginning to end. Tom Hiddleston taking the Tesseract from Endgame and morphing himself into this time variance authority world worked amazingly well. I think the way they explained the multiverse and their angle worked very, very well. I think Owen Wilson in his, as Morbius, again, another great casting of a character who had great chemistry with Tom Hiddleston as Loki, even had pretty decent chemistry with Sylvie. The episode 5 where we got to see all the Loki's variants kind of come together worked so well for me, and I loved how it kind of showed how Loki works in those different ways. Old Loki having that powerful moment of summoning Asgard was truly, truly phenomenal. This wasn't a perfect show. I think it did suffer some flaws in different ways. But I just think the character work and showing the multiverse worked a lot of it, a lot. I think Sylvie, understanding where Sylvie came from and knowing her struggle and why she was so, wanting to destroy the TVA and really end things of whoever was in charge. I understood where she came from. Even if she came to care for Loki and she came to, maybe romantically or not romantically fall in love with the Loki variant, which, again, if there ever was a character in the MCU that would fall in love with themselves, even in a weird, not okay way, it would be Loki. So the stuff with him and Sylvie kind of falling in love doesn't bother me because he's attracted to himself. That's like his whole shtick. And I'm so excited that season 2 is going to start filming her soon and probably come out next year at some point, if not at the end of this year. But I'm guessing more of next year. I think it's, given the placement, I think they're going to want to spread him out a little bit, especially with being our first introduction to the Kang the Conqueror, one of his variants, He Who Remains. An amazing final episode. This is the one finale that actually, I think, nailed it throughout because it didn't try forcing a plot for the very, very end. We had this little fake out with the living tribe, with the tribunal, and seeing Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror, this variant, He Who Remains, and give us explanations on why the TVA is the way it is, why everything happens the way it is. I think was extremely impactful and important to both the show and the MCU moving forward, I feel. And it kind of had, instead of having this over-the-top action style stuff, which you can have in finales, there's nothing wrong with that, but having it again be kind of a discussion and kind of a character outlook. You see Loki, the Loki variant we care about now, the one that came from Endgame, kind of understanding the importance of the timeline and why it might he might be right. We probably should not kill him and destroy this timeline and send everything through the loop, that he is making sense. But you also understand Sylvie as an individual, how she was displaced from a child and running from the TVA, why she didn't want to hear that and why she was happy to kill He Who Remains and send Loki to a different timeline and or universe, or something happened after Sylvie killed He Who Remains that we can't wait to see. We had emotional story beats with Owen Wilson finding out his past, as well as a couple other TVA agents taking out the past. We really got to see Loki transform from his basic self from, Avengers to an even more caring character who does care about what's right and what's wrong in the world through the TVA itself. I think this was a masterpiece of the first season of a show. I think it took a really interesting concept with some great character actors and put them in a very, and made it a very strong, compelling 6 episode show. And I can't wait for more. And I can't wait to see what more of Jonathan Majors as well too. But man, Loki is by far my favorite MCU show. Barely edging out WandaVision, but those two shows for me were definitely in my top 10 list of last year, and they're leading the way for MCU TV shows for me right now. I'm interested to see how when I revisit this with Miss Marvel, sorry, and She-Hulk later this when those shows come out and see where they are on this list, and as this list gets larger like the MCU movies. But yeah, that's how I rank these 6 MCU TV shows. I'm curious to know down below, how would you rank the top 6 MCU shows so far? Am I too harsh on some of them? Am I too positive on other ones? Put your ranking down below. Give me, if you do like the video, give a like and stuff like that. If you like seeing MCU things ranked, give a subscription because next week I'm going to start the MCU movie ranking amount. Where I'm not sure where I'm going to start yet. There's so many movies and I can't cover them all in one video, but I'm going to break it up into at least a 4 to 5 part video that breaks down the MCU movies from a whole. That way it gets done before Thor and Love and Thunder, and when Thor Love and Thunder comes out, I can just slip it right into wherever ranking I think it will be in. But I kind of came up with this idea of leading into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. You can check out that review on my channel now. And I can't wait to kind of visit all of these Marvel movies. And I think even though the rankings, you'll see things lower than maybe some other people, I generally enjoy a lot of the Marvel content because I think they just make entertaining characters and entertaining movies and shows that people connect to on a pretty interesting level in different ways. But yeah, that's my MCU TV rankings. I can't wait to see yours. But until next time, I hope you have an excellent day. And I can't wait to see you next week when we go over my the beginning part of my MCU movie rank countdown list. Bye.